Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturian Society.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
I am Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. That over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Lewis, and we're your hosts for this fabulous, amazing, wonderful, chaotic podcast about writing.
I love that description.
I think it's good. I think it's on point. I
Yeah.
am very hungry. So, full disclosure, I'm extremely hungry, and I'm also having an adult beverage in my mermaid cup. It says, soul of a mermaid, mouth of a sailor.
Perfect
My
for you.
friend Mel made this for me. So if anyone wants any cool custom crafts, go just check out Melrose Designs. But I'm very excited because all of my friends have been getting tumblers because I've been buying her tumblers for them. And now
cool.
I finally have one because she gave it to me for my birthday. So I'm very
Yay.
pleased. And I need it. First, tell me about your week, and then I'll get into my week.
You have to close.
Yeah, I'll be the closer.
Okay. My week was very normal. I can now chew solid and crunchy foods with more ease, after my wisdom teeth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been oddly wonderful. Like, you never know how important it is to be able to chew until you can't chew.
I think about it a lot, actually.
Chewing is a wonderful pleasure in life, and I don't think we appreciate it enough. So I like tentatively ate some potato chips a couple days ago.
Nice.
And I'm getting to the point where like stuff isn't getting stuck as much, so I can like chew with the back of my teeth a little more. So I've been having a grand old time. I had a hamburger the other day.
So triumphant. If I don't get to chew my food and I can like feel chewing, I feel like I haven't eaten, and I don't get like the I'm full signal just doesn't go off, which is why soups don't work for me, smoothies don't work for me. Anything you don't have to like chew, like that feels like a carby type of chew.
Yeah.
And for some reason my body's like, we haven't eaten. What do you? And I'm like, I just fed you. And it's like, no, you didn't, because we didn't chew anything.
Right. My dad's uncle, so my great uncle, 10, 15 years ago or something, he had something going on with his stomach where he wasn't allowed to eat solid foods. He had to like do smoothies or liquid diet. But like we were all like on vacation together. And so my great aunt would take the meals and then just put them in a blender and make a smoothie for him, and he would drink it with no complaints. I was like, wow, that is one hungry, desperate man.
Seriously. Oh, that sounds so gross.
It was. I mean, I didn't taste it, but it looked gross. And he was just so uncomplaining. He's like, this is fine and normal. This is how I live now.
That's so sweet. But, yeah. I would have a rough time with that.
Yes. So chewing is wonderful. If you have the ability to chew today, send up a prayer of thanks. It's just
really take a moment to be grateful for your ability to chew your food.
Just appreciate that.
That is so funny. I will appreciate that later when I get to eat dinner around 10 p.m. my time.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's basically it for my day. So would you like to start with yours? My week. You go.
Here's my week. Okay, so we're moving on Saturday. Magically, once again, my husband is out of town because, as we know, anyone who has listened for any period of time knows, anytime there's like some big life change going on that requires a lot of effort, my husband is just miraculously on orders, or he's away on training or something. So once again, that is also the case. And on top of it, my mom is out of town babysitting my little niece. So I am also cat sitting at her place right now. So that means that I didn't even get the full week to pack and clean. So I had to start packing early. So I've been living with boxes around me for like a week and a half now. Fully finished packing everything into boxes, like the last 2 boxes packed up yesterday. Then I cleaned everything. So I'll just be ready to move out when our movers come on Saturday, since I don't get to go back there now.
Right.
But okay. So here's where this is where things go wrong, right? I had everything meticulously planned so that I'd be ready to bring my cats over here and stay with my mom's cat, Lily, who's actually my cat, but lives with my mom now. Right. And that's a whole other sad story I'm just not going to get into right now. I just don't have the emotional metal for it. So here's where everything fell apart. I had to drive out to the property, early before work one morning to feed and water the chickens out there, since
Oh
we're
yeah,
not going
because
to
you
be
have
out there till
chickens.
later. Yeah, because we got chickens.
Yay.
I mean, these are no longer egg laying chickens, they're old chickens,
Oh.
but the owners left them there, the sellers left them. So we were like, well, we're not going to let y'all starve. Like, you
Yeah.
can join the chicken, cult, whatever, that's fine with us. But that means that someone had to go out there and feed and water them. And that was me, since everyone else was gone. And then on the way back, so on the way out there, it looked like some like wooden pallets must have fallen off of a truck and just shattered across the highway. So I managed to dodge all the debris in the wee early morning, but I must have gone over a nail or something, because
Ugh.
on the way back, my tire pressure just started dropping and dropping. And I was like, oh my God, am I even going to make it home? And then I had
Mhm.
forgotten to close the gate. So I had, because I'm not used to having a gate anymore. So I had to go
Oh.
back and close the gate. So then I was 20 minutes late for work getting
Ugh.
back, which I've never been late for work at this job. So I was like, mm.
At least it's the first time and not like a habit you're making.
It's true. I felt like
But
I feel like I'm a good enough employee, like they really can't complain.
mhm.
But and then I also discovered, because I guess the sellers, they had alpacas, and the people who were coming to transport their alpacas arrived really early. So they had to leave with the alpacas really early. So the
Mhm.
inside of the house is decently clean. The outside of the property is kind of a wreck. Like,
Mhm.
there's like a totally overflowing dumpster. There's the chicken coop is just full of stuff that they left. There's stuff all over the property that they just left behind. So there's so much work to do. And I also want to go and like actually clean the inside of the house, because I don't know, it looks like maybe they just had a chance to sweep out,
Oh,
which I
yeah.
appreciate, but I would also like to go sanitize everything before we move all of our stuff, and then it gets harder to clean.
Right.
So and then I had to come back and be like, so boss, I never ask for days off, and I know it's short notice and we have a report to give on Friday. Can I please have Friday off when we move the report? Because it turns out I have so much work to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And he at first didn't seem like super into it. And then I was like, oh, ho, ho, but let me give you all of I don't like to talk about my personal life at work. I just don't.
Right.
But I was like, I feel like if I don't describe to him
Yeah.
how very much I was trying
Yeah.
to not do this.
He cannot
Um,
deny me if I just lay everything out.
Exactly. And he didn't. He was like, oh my God. And I was like, yeah. And I saw snakes. There's a huge ass snake skin in the chicken coop. And I was like, well, we are
Oh,
taking care of that. I was like,
yeah.
there will be no snakes in my chicken coop.
Ugh.
So it looked like a rattlesnake skin. My brother asked, and I was like, it was a girthy ass rattlesnake. He was a fat boy. I was
Ah,
like, we are not doing that.
no.
Um, Anyways, so it's a perfect den for a snake right now. There's so much needs to be like just kind of like cleaned up. Especially, they weren't really chicken people, they were alpaca people who had chickens.
Mm.
We are chicken people who have chickens, so, and want like egg chickens. So
Right.
we need to like just upgrade it a little bit. And then I think maybe the snakes won't be so quick to be like, oh, this looks like a smelly little snake den. I'll sleep in here and shed in here and scare the crap out of people in here and eat the chickens.
Those
So
are absolutely snake goals. That's why they do everything they do.
it is, right? It's exactly all of their goals laid out. They have very simple lives, unlike mine. Okay, so all of that already sounds like a lot, right? I feel like I've already been talking for like 20 minutes about this. Okay, this is all, things are just now starting to go wrong. Okay, because then I call the auto shop. Luckily, there was one like just barely up the street from us. It is so close. It's where I've taken the car before, and they've been great. And so I was like, well, at least there's that. So I had to call and make an appointment, because their technicians only work during the week. My registration was almost up, because you have to get your car like inspected and re-registered every year in Texas.
Mhm.
I know it's that way in other states too, but I think in Oregon it was every 2 years. So anyways, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to take it in anyways for the tire, and the check engine light's been on forever, and their technicians who diagnose whatever the check engine light means only work during the week. So I was like, can I bring my car in and drop it off when you open? And they were like, yes, that's perfect. We'll have it for you by the end of the day. They didn't.
Oh,
So I had to replace 2 tires, not just the one tire. They had to run the diagnostic on my check engine light, and it took all day long. They could not figure out why the check engine light was still on. So
oh no.
then they called and they're like, so we're going to have to keep it overnight. Okay, mind you, I have no food left in my fridge. I have rice, like puffed rice cakes and popcorn and protein shakes on the counter.
Because you've been trying to eat it all for the move. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then I have the half of my birthday cake that is left, and I have already eaten most of the first half of it. And I have nowhere to sleep because the bed has been dismantled. Okay. Everything is boxed down to the last piece of silverware. So I'm like, okay, I have no car, can't go to mom's. Poor Lily, the kitty cat over here. I was like, I hope she has enough food for tonight because she's not eating until breakfast. And then I'm thinking, okay, the next day my car will be ready sometime in the morning because that's what they implied. So I called them around 11 a.m. when they still haven't called me. This is the next day now, thinking 11 a.m. is very generous. I cannot believe I haven't heard from them yet. They're like, yeah, so we're really still trying to pin down that check engine light. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
And they were like, we think it's this sensor. The only place we can find that has a replacement part is like, I don't know, like some Nissan dealership in Austin. And I was like, okay. And they were like, also, it's going to be this much more money. It was a ton more money. We are trying to pay for movers and house repairs. This is not the time to have a really expensive car problem. So anyways.
If it's the sensor, is that like a super necessary? Because that just tells you when you need to check the engine, right? So you can drive for a while without it.
Yeah. And it's been fine. So I think that's also why it took them so long to figure out what was wrong, was because they were like, the car is working fine. But the thing is, I know I will never go back in and replace it. So I was like, fine, like fine,
do what you want.
Like replace it. Like I don't want to just not ever do it. It really bugs me to have the check engine light on all the time. So I was like, just do it.
You could just be Penny from Big Bang Theory, because she always has her check engine light on and it always bothers Sheldon. That's what's going through my mind right now. I'm like, you could just
Sheldon in
Penny.
that scenario. No, that I am the Sheldon. I'm like, why are you still on check engine light? Drives me bananas. Okay.
And so Penny's like, no, it's not a big deal. They just told me the check engine light is broken, not the engine. And he's like, well, then you need to get the light fixed.
So yeah, I would get the light fixed because it would bug me. Sheldon. I would be like, now I'll never know if something really is wrong.
Right.
Which I guess was actually exactly my scenario.
Yeah.
So because it was the sensor. I don't know why that part is so expensive either.
That's weird.
Yeah. So then I called them on my lunch break, right? Well, there's like a period of time in which I can choose to take my lunch break. And I was like, okay, I'm going to wait till like the end of it and then call again and be like, because I have to, by the way, I had to limp my car, but the tire was completely flat when I took it in that morning. So I had to put my hazards on and limp my shaking car up the street. If it was any farther or had to cross the road, I would not have been able to get it there. But I managed to make it there. And then I had to walk back, which is luckily not that long of a walk. But I was also thinking to go pick up my car, I have to have time to walk to the shop and then do all of like the final sign out and pay for everything and then drive back. And then load up my stuff, my work stuff, my the recording stuff, the cats and the cat stuff, and then like garbage that I need to throw in my mom's dumpster because we don't have a dumpster. So I was like, okay, can I do that and drive to my mom's all in my lunch break? Because I had a meeting. They scheduled a second meeting with no warning, right directly after my lunch break. So there was no wiggle room at all.
Right.
So then I called them and they're like, yeah, if you leave your house in 15 minutes, we'll probably have it ready by the time you get here. And I was like, that is exactly past my timeline. Like that is just past when I would have been able to do this. So they were like, okay, well, it'll be ready by the end of the day, 5:30. I don't get off work till 6. So I think they heard me, my tone of voice just change. I've already been told at this point, they put the wrong tires on my car. So it's going to be more expensive because I don't have time to wait for them to find the right tires. And they're like, well, we gave you a discount. Okay. It's still more than it would have been.
Yeah.
Like
it's still money out of my pocket.
Exactly. And then they were like, so then when I tried to use our military discount, which I almost never use the military discount because I feel weird about it because I'm like, it's not my service. But for car stuff, which can get very expensive, I do typically.
Yeah.
So they were like, yeah, well, we already applied that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they were like, to cover the tires. And I'm like, so give me a discount. Like,
that was the discount.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's just, I was like, I didn't need expensive tires. Why did you do this? Anyways, so then they were like, okay, well, how about this? You can pay over the phone and we will leave your keys and your paperwork under the mat inside of your car outside of the dealership. And you can come walk over and pick it up when you're off work. We'll already be closed. And I was like, fine.
Ugh. That sounds so sketchy though. Like anyone, if they knew what they were looking for, could just take your car.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could go out there and try my luck at any of the cars left there after work. I mean, it's very busy. So if anything sketchy was going on, people would see. But I mean, I didn't look sketchy. Also, my car was parked right next to a hearse that was there to be worked on. And I was like, yeah, I feel about ready for one of those at this point. Like, I'm so done.
Just lay down in the back and they find you there in the morning, like, take me now.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Trust me, I'm ready. So then I've been hoping to already be over here on my lunch break, right? So then I had to, and we're getting towards the end of my day. Like I'm describing to you my day without a single gap in it.
It's
and
one day.
this is all one freaking day. So then I drive my car back to my apartment and I start to load it up. It only took me 2 trips, but like I was close to muscle failure because I had like 6 or 7 bags in my first trip, then both cats, my purse, the cake container that had the other half of my cake in it, and a big thing of cat litter and a thing of like a big container with cat food. And I carried all of this down my second trip. And then I drove over to my mom's. And here, this is such a long story. I'm so sorry. But
here we get to the real epic part.
Well, here's why I wanted to use my lunch break to do all that and drive over here is because my mom's complex, there is no parking. So if you get here past 6 o'clock, you basically cannot get a spot anywhere near the apartment that you live in.
Ugh.
So
apartments I got here, need to plan that better. Why don't they just give everyone like 2 spots?
Well, they do. But the thing is, a lot of the apartments have more cars than just 2.
Oh, well, they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Well, then the big problem started because they started like making all these reserves parking spots. And it's like, this is just a normal parking spot. It's not covered. It's not a garage. It's $75 a month just for a parking spot that was previously just a normal parking spot. And it's still, for all intents and purposes, just a normal parking.
And it's like one person. In one apartment.
Yep.
That's so weird.
It's infuriating. So I got here around 7 o'clock. And there was no parking. So I had to park far away, do all of this again, and walk it this long ass distance into my mom's apartment, then go back for the second load. Right. And walk all the way across the complex. And then I got here, I had to take everything up the stairs because of course there's stairs here as well. And then I took a shower. I changed the sheets on the guest bed so I'll have somewhere to sleep. I poured myself a drink. I set up my computer and here I am. And you want to know what I had? The end. But as a bonus, do you want to know what I had for dinner last night?
Cake?
Yeah, I sat on the couch and I ate cake off of the tray with the fork.
Yeah,
the whole cake.
I mean, you think that sounds sad. I think that sounds awesome.
No, it was kind of awesome. It would have been awesome if I had like other options. It's just like, this is my dinner.
Yeah, choosing cake out of several healthy options feels much better than I guess all I have is cake.
I guess all I have is cake, or I have like puffed rice cakes or popcorn, which I'd already eaten multiple times during the day. So anyways, I also had to sleep on this like old twin mattress. I guess I used to sleep on every night and we somehow have kept it through all the moves and it usually is just under our bed. And I didn't have any pillows because the pillows were packed and I didn't have any sheets. I had this blanket. So I turned the air in our apartment up to 74 so I wouldn't get cold. And then I laid down on that old ass mattress and it was so uncomfortable. I was like, am I old? Why can I suddenly not sleep on this mattress? Yeah. And I had my little blanket and oh my God, I'm still in so much pain. I woke up in so much pain. Oh, and as the final kicker, I woke up and my both eyelids were swollen almost shut and really painful and red because my allergies had kicked in.
That sucks.
So I was like, this is my life now. And I kept it such a good attitude until my phone call at like 3 o'clock when they were like, you won't be able to pick it up after 6. And then I was like, okay, thank you for letting me know. I'll do that. Hung up. And then I screamed, threw my wallet against the wall and then cried for like 30 minutes. Because I was I kept it together until now.
See, Ash, if life was fair, which of course it's not, but if it was, by the time you get to 30, you will just cease to have problems altogether.
Wouldn't it be so amazing?
You've had like a lifetime's worth of problems like packed into like 20 to 30 years.
I know. And the thing is, some people have said that I'm negative, and I'm like, I feel like you just catch me in my like bad moments because I really try not to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I am sarcastic. I think either it's that or people mistake my sarcasm for bitterness.
Yeah.
And while that was true of 13-year-old Ash, my sarcasm is truly a humorous coping mechanism for me to stay positive. It is quite the opposite of me being negative.
This is how I get through the negative.
Yeah, I'm like, this is how I don't give in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, that's my story. So here I am, and my shoulders hurt. And I
Aw.
forgot my webcam. Of course, I knew I'd forget something. So if I look blurry, to those watching on YouTube, that is why. And I can't get my pop filter for some reason. I took it off for the first time since I put it on the microphone, and I can't get it back on. So,
yeah. Well, in like hopefully better story news, how was your birthday? Because your birthday was this past week.
I was gonna say, because I was gonna cap this with some good news, which is
Yeah.
so for anyone who was like in the poll of will Ash's husband remember her birthday or not, he not only remembered my birthday and called me at 7 a.m., but he showed up and surprised me.
Oh my gosh, that's so
which was so
cool.
great, because I had also been that day started to go crazy too, because it started out well. My mom brought me my favorite coffee and like a homemade Pop-Tart thing from the coffee shop that I love. And it was great. I was like, this is fantastic. I could be good for the whole rest of the day if I just got to chill. But I knew that I had social obligations later in the day. So I was like, okay, so I have to like stay in the mindset that I'm going to go out. But then the sellers emailed us about the alpaca issue, and they were leaving early, and they were like, we left the key for you inside the crawl space door. And we were like, we didn't plan to get out there today. It's an hour and a half away from there. So then I was like, oh my God, there's no time to do this and to meet that person. And I was like spiraling, because to be fair, there was no time solution that worked for everybody. Like there genuinely wasn't. And my mom was like, don't worry about it, Ash. Just relax. I promise you, I will take care of it. You don't need to worry about it. And I was like shaking. I was like,
I can't do this.
I was like, no. We just need to cancel all the plans and just go out there and get the key. I just being in limbo and not knowing what the plan was really stressed me out. So she's like, I promise you, I will take care of it. You don't need to worry about it. Just go. She said, like, go have a drink or relax or something. Just do something that relaxes you. So I laid in bed for 2 hours and just stared at the ceiling while my brain was like, how can we do this? How can we do this? How can we get the key and still meet our social obligations? And then I finally went and I sat on the patio in the sunlight for 45 minutes and did the same thing. But at least I was in the sunlight, so because the sun helps. And then all of a sudden I hear a knock at the door, and Javi's there. And the social obligations have been employed this whole time, and everyone but me knew. Mom did have to go get the key, which was inconvenient. But then we went to dinner, and it was amazing. And I have a brand new computer because Javi gave me a new computer, which is great because my other one was just the cheapest one I could buy.
Yeah.
So it couldn't run like multiple programs at once without just breaking down. So this one is amazing and fabulous. And my friend Mel, she made me this cup, like I already said, and Javi got me a new charm for my bracelet.
Oh my gosh. What a nice day.
I know. I was like, this might be the best birthday ever. Like, it was a really good birthday.
Javi was on point this time.
He was. He really had to like make up for the last couple of years, and he did. Aside from that 3-hour window where I was like, I just freaking hate my birthday.
I'm just picturing you like literally in bed staring at the ceiling and then saying, no, it's my birthday, dang it, and going outside to lay in the sun and stress about things.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Oh, I had laid down intending to take a nap, and then I was like, well, okay, I heard a new email came in. I'm just going to check it real quick before I take my midday nap, which I never do because I was being luxurious. And they were like, so we had to leave, and the key is there in the crawl space, and there's this like a friend moving, or like with the movers, like getting all of our stuff gone basically. And I was like, okay, so definitely can't take a nap now.
Right.
Yeah. So it was really good, and then it was very stressful, and then it was awesome. So overall successful.
Cool. Roller coaster of a day.
Yes, my birthdays usually are. I have a very weird complex about them. I sincerely wish I didn't have a birthday most years. Like, not out of like a bitterness thing, out of like, I truly think I would be happy. There's just so much pressure on that one day.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if it's just like, it's kind of like the way like hobby is always gone when I have like really hard stuff to do, or like everybody is gone. Like this used to happen with my mom when I would move. My siblings would also magically just have other commitments that were not movable, like they had to do. So much in that way, my birthday is always at a bad time of year. Like always, people are always busy. So then they're like, oh no, we'll do stuff. And they mean it sincerely, but then life catches up and there's always so many other important things to do. Yeah. But then they want to make up for it. So, but then it's worse because it's out of obligation at that point.
Yeah.
So
you're like, I don't need this. It's fine.
It gives me so much anxiety. I'm like, I genuinely would rather you not do anything than force yourself to make plans with me or to try to hold to plans or to try and do something when you don't have time. That stresses me out. So anyway, so now I have a very bad complex about my birthday. Also, I'm the middle child, so that's a big part of it. So, yep. Anyways, but it was a great birthday.
Good.
Yeah.
Yay.
Hooray. Yeah. Do you guys hear scratching? It's the cat playing in the litter box. I can't get her to stop. It's right there. Yeah. Oh, that 25 minutes in. That was my story. I am so sorry, everybody.
It was shorter than I imagined it was going to be when you first started in. So
really? Oh my God.
Because 4 minutes of that was me. So
oh good. I'm glad. Oh, anyways, here I am. I'm glad to be here.
I do have a question for you, and you may not know the answer to this, but since you're a chicken person with chickens, right?
Hit me.
I was making eggs for dinner tonight, and 2 of them came out with fluorescent green whites. Is this normal / poisonous?
It's definitely not normal.
Okay, I didn't eat them because I was like, no.
Yeah, I don't know about poisonous, but they probably would have made you sick. That sounds like a sick chicken.
Yeah. It was weird. And some of the eggs in the same carton were fine. It was just a couple of them.
It was probably a sick chicken that laid them.
Yeah.
Poor thing. What kind of, so this is, I'm like weirdly bougie about eggs because we had chickens. Like I try to only do cage free or pasture raised chicken eggs because those are the eggs that are really good. And the yolks are like, so here's some let me drop some chicken knowledge on you.
Woo, do it.
Some egg knowledge specifically. The more orange the yolk is, the better the flavor and the healthier the chicken typically. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So also like the thicker the white, like the less runny the white is, probably the healthier and the better fed the chicken. If it's a really runny egg, like really runny whites, probably it's just lives on like a grain diet, which is not great for them. And also the eggs are basically tasteless in comparison. Same if it's just like yellow, the yolk is just like a kind of a yellow. It should be like a bright orange or like a really deep orange.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll see if y'all don't believe me, you can literally go buy like the really cheap, like white eggs or whatever, the styrofoam cartons, crack one of those in a bowl, look at it, and then get one of the pasture raised, like organic pasture raised eggs, crack that one. It's insane. They look totally different.
Huh.
Probably didn't believe me for a while, but yeah, see, I'm bougie about my eggs. I will be so cheap about everything except for eggs and milk. And the milk is for a different reason, but it's because I'm just gonna.
Do you want to share?
I do want to share. This is the topics I know about.
Drop your farm knowledge.
Let me drop my farm knowledge on you. So milk didn't used to be pasteurized, right? When they would sell it. But basically when like the dairy industry kind of became industrialized in the US, obviously, unsurprisingly, the care of the cows like really went downhill and the conditions were not sanitary. Cows were really sick. It was really gross. So people were getting really sick from the milk because nothing was like kept clean. So then instead of making rules like, hey, you need to treat your animals well and use clean practices. Yeah, instead,
like a solution.
Yeah, like a lasting solution that makes sense. Instead, the government was like, no, you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing. It's cheap. We benefit. So how about this instead? We're just going to make a law that you cannot sell unpasteurized milk. Pasteurized milk is boiled. So that means there are no yucky germs left that can make you sick. And there's also no nutrients left.
Yeah.
So it tastes great. But
what does it do for you?
But it does nothing for you. Also, this is very gross, but the reason they started pasteurizing it was because like pus and stuff from the cow's sick udder would get in the milk.
Yeah.
So that still happens. I mean, hopefully not as much now that hopefully people are using clean practices. They have to pasteurize it either way. Who could say? And you are not legally allowed to sell unpasteurized milk. So we would trade with other farms for it.
Oh,
it's insane. It's so good. It's so different. It's so rich. But yeah. However, same with goat's milk. The problem is fresh goat's milk. If you like milk it into like a bucket with ice around it or something, like you get it cold right away. It tastes very similar to cow's milk and is super good for you. Even people who are lactose intolerant can often drink goat's milk with no problem. The reason goat's milk tastes different in the store is because it has to be pasteurized. When you pasteurize or heat goat's milk, it activates some enzyme or protein in it that cow's milk doesn't have. That's why it gives it that weird, like, goaty flavor that normal milk doesn't have. So there is your dairy lesson, everybody.
See, you learned something.
Yeah,
more than writing related.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. If your friend owns a farm and you know that they're clean, or it's just a little homestead and they want to share some of their unpasteurized milk with you, go for it. It is safe. And also, the best eggs are the ones that are cage free or pasture raised. They just are. So
cool.
I would like literally die on those hills. I don't know why I have such like a hang up about it. I got like personally offended once when Javi was like, there's no difference between the eggs. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to have this talk now.
5 hours later, like, just listen to what I'm telling you.
Yeah. See, I just let him make the mistake once because I always buy the groceries. So he wouldn't know. I let him buy the eggs that he wanted to make deviled eggs with. So he got the cheapest ones. And the eggs were so, like, the whites were so runny that he couldn't even peel the like boiled eggs without just like the whole egg just falling apart.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, inferior eggs.
That's what you get
for purchasing inferior eggs. Yeah. Anyway, support pasture raised also. It's also like people who are all animals in cages, which, I mean, I do agree. I think it's really sad to keep animals crammed together in cages. So there's another reason to support cage free and pasture raised. Because like, they're happier chickens and they're healthier and their eggs are better. So why wouldn't you? So duh. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm done. 30 minutes in, I have given you guys the insane odyssey of my week and also a lesson in farm to table eggs and milk.
We are a podcast of many knowledges.
We are. There's going to be way more farm stories upcoming, you guys. So you better get used to it because we are finally getting to move out there soon. We're going to get baby chicks soon. So yay. I told Karissa if she comes out here, she can name one.
That's right. I need to think about what I'm going to name it.
I know. You have to pick something excellent.
I know. You should, like, you're going to name all of them like Bob and Stuart, and I'm going to be like something really insane so that the chicken is different than all the others.
My last chicken that I like personally named, I named her Athena.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I thought it was really good. And then a little girl that we knew, she named one of our chickens Marina after like the Barbie mermaid movie or something. Oh. And we were like, interesting. One of the chickens was named Sony because I just gotten a new camera. So I was like, that's Sony. Nice. Yeah. And then there was Blondie the duck, which turned out to be a boy. Yeah. So
fun.
I love the weirder the chicken names, the better. And what's so sad is these existing chickens on the property, I don't know what their names are. I'm guessing they don't even have names. And there's 3 guineas that walk around, and I don't know what the guineas' names are either. So I'm gonna name them something.
Just give them new names.
My mom has a dish towel right there that's got a chicken looking over its shoulder with its little fluffy butt is like the main portion of this picture. And it says, sometimes you just got to say, cluck it and walk away.
Nice.
It's good. Nice one, Mom. Excellent.
Way to be in theme.
Seriously. My mom is the one who's obsessed with chickens. I like them. Javi's very excited to have eggs. My mom like adores chickens.
Cool.
I'm sorry. Okay. So, okay. Any book recs?
Yes. I read finally the book that you got me for Christmas, which was Mageborn by Jessica Thorne, I believe it is. And it's a new adult book. And for some weird reason, I was assuming it was about the Fae, but you knew me better. And it's not about the Fae. And
I would have not have gotten you a book about the Fae.
Thank you. And it was really good. I think it's a duology. So the second book is out. So I'm probably going to buy that soon, but it's very good.
I love a duology.
Yeah, it's fun. And it is, did I already say this? It's new adult, but it didn't get like spicy and stuff. So it was like the perfect combination for me. I loved it. It was good.
I am so happy I picked the perfect, because it was hard because you were like, because before Christmas, I was like, okay, so what do you need more of? And you were like, new adult fantasy. And I was like, this is going to be hard.
Yeah.
Because most new adult fantasy is spicy, which is not Carissa's vibe.
No.
So I am so pleased with myself.
You did an excellent
job. I'm so glad you liked it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you liked it. That's why I tried to get you like cool stuff that was kind of like themed for the book. So
Yeah, it was fun. I liked it a lot.
Yay.
It has a really cool magic system that I like. And like I was 3/4 of the way through and I was thinking, yeah, I kind of know how this is going to end. It's fun and everything, right? And then I got a few chapters later, I was like, oh my gosh, this went a direction I was not anticipating, which is of course the best. So it was fun.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I'm so glad. Now I have to read it. I know almost nothing about it because I forgot everything that I read about it to pick it for you. So cool. I have to read it. I'm trying to think of IOD book recs. We read, here I have one. Okay, so we did read Persuasion on That Pretentious Book Club, and it was good. It was short. The last third of the book is worth reading. The first 2/3. If you like that kind of stuff, then you'll like it. I'm not that into classics. So I was like, just get to the drama. And then the last third was like drama everywhere. And I was like, perfect.
Boom, boom, drama.
Yeah. So my recommendation is like for the last third of that book. But here's my legitimate recommendation, and you will definitely approve of this. Fablehaven by Brandon Mull.
Oh my gosh.
So good. Oh my God. We read it. It's a middle grade. And so we'll probably talk about it today. Yes. It's an upper middle grade. Unlike the Fairy Tale Detectives that was the last middle grade rec that you made, is like a lower middle grade, like a younger middle grade.
Like 13, 12. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Fablehaven was like upper middle grade. They went in there strong. They were like led with like death, asphyxiation of grandparents. I was like, all right, Brandon Mull, let's see it. Let's do this. And it was an excellent book. So highly recommend.
Brandon Mull is so underrated. I think he's so good. And I met him once. He came to the Tucson Festival of Books when I was like I want to say I was a junior in high school. And I was even more shy and awkward than I am now. So I was like, gosh, I want to meet him, but I was like too scared to go up and talk to him. So I just sat there staring at him, trying to gather the courage.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
He did like a little lecture / panel, whatever. And then afterward he did a signing. And so I went up to the signing and I like gave my book. I'm like, I love this series so much. He's like, thanks. And then he had like really deep, good conversations with the person in front of me and behind me. But I was like, this is still the best day of my life.
That is hilarious. Oh my God.
I was like shaking afterwards. I'm like, I'm such a big fan, but I don't know how to communicate that without coming across as a stalker.
I think that would be me. I have never been in the scenario to meet like one of the people that I admire. Like I've never ever like met like any like even minor celebrity or like author celebrity. Like I've never met anyone. I was gonna say I've never met anyone interesting. That's not true. I've never met anyone famous and interesting. Exactly. Or famous at all.
Yeah.
That's so fun. Cool. I'm gonna pass it on to Kendall. She's the one with all the author stories. So now there'll be someone else with an author story in the mix. But it was great. So even if you're an adult, highly recommend. Fablehaven was delightful. And because it was a kid's book, it was very fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What about our word of the week?
Ooh, okay, word of the week. While you were talking before, I was like, man, I wish I'd made the word of the week pasteurized because you kept saying it over and over. But alas, I did not expect it to go that direction. So that's not the word of the week.
Bonus word of the week. You're welcome, everybody.
Okay, so intransigent. I assume it's a gent. INTRANSIGENT. Intransigent. And it means unwilling to compromise, incapable of being swayed or diverted, not susceptible to persuasion.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Which feels like my word. I feel like this is me.
Karissa is very intransigent.
Yeah.
It's very, very true.
Very me word.
I don't know if I'm intransigent. I don't feel like I super am. On some stuff I am. I am totally intransigent on eggs and milk. 100%. I have very strong stances. I will not be persuaded otherwise. I like it. That's a good one. That's totally one you can like use.
I know. I'm like, can I slip this into my bio somehow? I don't know.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a strange word because it doesn't sound like that's what it means. Intransigent feels like it has something to do with traveling or something. Oh, really?
Yeah, but like, which means like you're not gonna travel. Like you wouldn't move. You're not movable.
Well, yeah. I guess like transient or people that move. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking. You said intransigent, so I was like, this is going to be something to do with movement, and then intransigent, not moving, lack of movement. I guess. Yeah. All the word nerds are like, yeah, I'm sure everyone else is doing the same thing.
So boring.
I
Also,
love this is something only writers like to do with words.
I know, it's so fun. Okay, so also second bonus word, I was writing today and I typed in the word lackadaisical or whatever, lackadaisical.
I love that one.
There's only one S in the word and it's at the end. I was always under the impression it was lackadaisical. It's apparently
Everyone
just
says
lackadaisical. I know, there's no
Lackadaisical.
S after the K.
I always say lackadaisical.
I know, right? And I was just stunned. It was one of those moments, you know what the Nelson Mandela effect is? Or the Mandela effect. So the idea that like we are in a parallel universe, and that's why people have collective knowledge that is factually untrue. Like people believe that Nelson Mandela died in like the 80s, but he didn't. Yeah. I think this might be a Nelson Mandela effect word because I could have sworn there was an S after the K in lackadaisical. I'm so confused.
No, that's definitely a Mandela effect because I also thought that there was. Lackadaisical also sounds so wrong.
It does. There needs to be an S there.
Lackadaisical. I don't like the way it feels when I say it.
Oh,
lackadaisical.
I even thought to myself, I'm like, is it April 1st yet? Is this like an internet prank that's like really intense? No, unless they're really early because we're recording this on the 30th of March. So
no, this is true.
Not a prank.
It's true. It's almost April.
Which is also crazy, but
yeah.
I don't know what to do with this knowledge.
I know, me either.
Lackadaisical. I think we should just all make a pact to change the word and make it lackadaisical.
I will only say lackadaisical from here on out. I will be intransigent about my pronunciation of lackadaisical.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. There's a bonus. Intransigent, lackadaisical, pasteurized.
Boom. You're welcome.
This is the crowd that would like that. It's so nice to know that there are people out there that are like enjoying that fact.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
I could talk about cool words all day. It's true.
Exactly.
Too bad.
It is too bad. They're the ones missing out. So should we get into our theme for this episode?
Yeah. And to clear my throat. So, all right, we're going to talk about the differences / classifications for middle grade, young adult, and new adult, because I think sometimes the lines can get blurred. So hopefully just add some clarity on like what each is. Okay, my first question / comment is new adult even children's literature? Because YA and middle grade are, you know?
It is not children's literature unless you're a literary agent for some reason categorizing it in children's literature because you want to represent it because you have YA connections.
Yeah, so the weird thing is that YA came first, but YA is essentially just the bridge between middle grade and new adult. Like you can almost define YA by not being the other two. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
So it's kind of a weird.
I don't think it's children's literature at all, but I think that it is occasionally grouped that way because literary agents who represent young adult fiction, because it's like the same people who read young adult fiction are also reading new adult fiction. It's like the same, it's weird because it's like the same target demographic for the most part. So I think literary agents are like, well, it's all the same because people reading young adult are not always quote unquote young. And what does that mean anyways? Does that mean like 16 to 20, 20 to 30? Because I consider all of that to be a young adult. So
yeah, true.
So I think that like really young adult and new adult are pretty much the same thing. It's just like there's like lower and upper middle grade fiction, which I already even mentioned this episode. I think that young adult, new adult is more like lower young adult, upper young adult fiction is really how I feel about it.
I kind of feel like young adult is for teenagers, or at least like target audience / the age of the protagonist teenagers, and the new adult is like 20s.
I agree. Like high schoolers versus college.
Yeah,
I agree.
And then middle grade is middle school / upper elementary, depending on how high or low it is.
Exactly. I think young adult I don't think young adult counts as children's fiction. I don't really. I get why they group it that way. Well, because I don't really consider high schoolers children. I mean, it depends on the subject, because for some things I very much consider them children.
Yeah.
And for
they're
other
legally
things,
children.
Like, legally they're children. Yeah. But and for some things I'm like, you're like, when I hear about things that like high schoolers are getting up to, I'm like, you're a child. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
But like, I guess for like taste in fiction, like we read books written by adults and about adults as kids too.
True.
So I guess I don't.
Yeah, like all of your literature classes in high school are pretty much dealing
Yeah.
with adult stuff. So
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I
classics
just,
and everything.
yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I definitely wouldn't consider new adult children's fiction.
Mhm.
Young adult, I consider young adult fiction, but it's
Yeah.
categorized in children. So
Yeah, it is weird. It all three feel like they should be in their own category because even middle grade sometimes doesn't feel like children's literature. Like children's literature to me is like picture books and like readers
yeah.
and that kind of stuff. But I mean, the target audience for middle grade is still technically children, like people, 10, 11, 12 and stuff. But
Yeah.
it still does. And then like, where's the transition? Because like middle grade feels very similar to YA and YA feels very similar to NA. So like,
Yeah.
where's the line? Because middle grade and NA feel nothing alike, but somehow with YA in the middle, they all feel like the same category.
It's true. I think some series like Percy Jackson did the thing where like they basically aged you through. Harry Potter did it too. They aged you through all of like the middle grade childhood times. They aged you straight into young adult in like the last book or two in the series. Because like I feel like when you hit 16, that's a young adult book. So that's typically the age range, even if it was part of a middle grade series. So I think maybe that's also part of why young adult is such like a bridge, is because when people do middle grade series, the characters have to grow up somewhere. And like they're going to grow up to 16 is very popular because like a lot of pivotal things happen in literature at the age of 16. Yeah. So a lot of like the last books in series are like, and now they're young adults. And then we move on to the next stage because middle grade was moving into one stage of life. And then like the last book is moving your characters into the next stage. It's like a send off.
Right. Yeah. 16 is really popular. I feel like that's probably because it's not old enough to make them an adult where they like have total control over their life choices, but it's not so young that
you'll be like, that's a child.
Yeah. That you can't take them seriously, essentially.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't I would consider a 16-year-old a young adult. Yeah. I still consider them babies about some stuff because I'm just like, oh, sweet babies. And I want to protect them. But also they're basically young adults. I mean, especially because like in cultures and throughout all of history, by the time you turn 15 or 16, like you're expected to basically have like an adult like control over yourself and your life, mind, an adult mindset, adult skills and stuff. So in my head, I'm still like 16, young adult. Yeah. Even if there's some things I want to protect them from.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of what young adult means. It's why it's not adults, because you're still young and you're still childlike in certain ways. And so there are things that you aren't quite ready for.
Yeah. There's also the type of content that you can typically include. Like middle grade, you can be really silly. You can definitely bend the rules of reality, even like of storytelling. And although it makes me cringe because I'm no longer a middle schooler, I would have loved it as a middle schooler. So you can play around and get a lot sillier and way more whimsical in middle grade. Young adult, you have to lose some of the whimsy. You just do. You have to start taking a bit of a darker edge. Yeah. And then new adult can be very dark, very gritty, is often very spicy. I would say young adult, don't make young adult books spicy. Baby spice. I
agree. I would say so like middle grade is where they have crushes and they're like, I'm kind of starting to notice, but I'm not going to go anywhere with it. YA is where they want to start dating and like, getting themselves out there, but it doesn't go necessarily.
You can have some kissing scenes in there, baby spice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then new adult is when it's like, okay, now I feel more like an adult. I'm going to,
do adult relationship things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. Let's not blur those lines, please. Everybody, can we please? Those are important.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I could go on for that, but
I know. That's what I also
it does bother me
to protect my young adulters from.
Yeah, YA feels like it's going so far, and I feel like partially that's what even created new adult as a genre in the first place.
I think it is
because wanted to take it farther.
Yeah, new adult as a genre, if you guys are kind of like new to the literary establishment, new adult is very new. There was previously just middle grade, young adult, adult, and that was it. But adult fiction is typically characters in their 30s or older. Yeah. So young adult was kind of being used to encompass everywhere from like 16 up to 30, but there just weren't a lot of books that were being written about characters from the age of 20 to 30 at all, because they could be included in young adult, but it wasn't really the target for young adult. So new adult is very new. I'm super glad we have it because there was a whole 10 years of people's lives that were just not being represented in any characters ever because there was no category for it.
Right.
So I'm very grateful for new adult existing, but yeah.
It is still new. And that's not why it's called new adult, but it is actually new.
It's because you're new to being an adult.
Yeah, it's new squared.
Yeah, it's new squared, exactly. So
yeah. But yeah, I do think one of the differences between the three is the themes that are acceptable in them. So like middle grade has to be lighter. You can deal with dark things. So I just did my Catherine's Corner episode on a series of unfortunate events. And those books deal with some dark things like parents dying and, you know, abuse from guardians and that kind of stuff. Because that is, you know, unfortunately things some kids do have to deal with, and they have to have a place to, you know, confront that and everything. But it's dealt with in a lighter manner, if that makes sense. And then YA can go a little darker, a little more, I guess, morally complex, where you start to acknowledge, you know, good people do bad things, and, you know, it's a little less black and white and stuff. And then I feel new adult is supposed to get more graphic.
And I agree.
And like showing it as opposed to showing the consequences of it, which feels like what young adult usually does. But again, that line is blurred. There are some very dark and graphic YA books, but I always tend to feel like those are more new adults. And then there are new adult books that are lighter, but those always feel a little more young adult. So
I agree. I think the thing that ties together or really separates middle grade young adult and new adult from adult fiction is that you've brought this up before. So this is actually your original thought. I've just thought about it a lot since then, that it's about, there's always like one or more lessons that the characters and the readers learn in the story. In middle grade, young adult, new adult, they all have that feature of lessons learned. But you have to be very specific about how you approach them and present them depending on the category. So middle grade, you can spell it out. We learned this and the characters learned this, and you can spell it the hell out, and you should, because they're middle grade kids.
Yeah,
so
friendship speeches and like clear black and white lines.
Exactly. Young adult, you can be a little more obvious with the lessons learned, right? Definitely do not spell it out, because middle grade kids, you can still talk to kind of like their kids a little bit. I think you can include more darker stuff in there than people think nowadays. Like Brandon Mull is a great example. Go read his book if you're like, how to talk about hard stuff with kids. Same with Series of Unfortunate Events. Same with Percy Jackson, Chronicles of Nick. These are all middle grade series that deal with some really tough stuff, but for middle graders. So definitely still include the content. You just have to approach it differently. Be very obvious about lessons learned. Young adult, like you said, you can deal with more like, you know, like more like twisty turny stuff. There's a lot of like, there may be some morally gray areas as opposed to everything being black and white in middle grade, which is good because that is what life is like. And so young adult should represent that, but do not talk to young adult readers like they're children. They hate it.
Yeah. And I think young adult books, really the intention should be to, if you have a lesson, if you have this moral point, to set it up where you're leading them to a kind of conclusion, but where you open it up to it being their conclusion, right? Where they can maybe get a couple different things out of it. It's less concrete, but it's still true. If that makes sense.
You don't say this is what the lesson is.
Right.
You tell them a story that could lead them to concluding that this or that is a good thing to take away from the story. Right. And then new adult it's pretty much the same, but I think that there's maybe, depending on the genre of new adult, like maybe less of a lesson in some than others. I think, like, for example, spicy fae books, which are not our favorite. I don't know that the purpose is specifically to learn a lesson, which is fine. It doesn't have to be. But you should be making some kind of statement or sending some kind of message in your theme, because that's what a theme is. So with new adult, young adult and new adult, but especially new adult fiction, I think we get more away from teaching lessons or trying to instill really important values or have the characters like learn these new things. And it's more about offering a really complex theme for the readers to absorb throughout the story, and they will inherently get something out of that. But it's less about learning lessons and more about presenting them with the opportunity to have new ideas about stuff.
I think it's possible too that because new adult is still so new, I don't know I guess this is debatable, but I'm not convinced that the first versions of things are usually the best versions of things. Like if you look
Mhm.
at inventions or, literary movements and stuff, the
Yeah.
first few that come out are usually the worst quality because they're functioning on nothing to take inspiration from, really. And
Yeah.
so I think we're still so early on in new adult that I think we're only just now getting to the point where we're getting good new adults, if that makes sense. I don't want to make
I
anyone mad,
agree.
but I think I don't think we know yet what the
Mhm.
benefits and the I don't know, I guess the purpose of new adult is going to be, because I don't think we've
Yeah,
gotten there yet. I think we're still
I
kind of
agree.
formulating it. So I don't know. Is it going to be more like adult? Because one of the things in adult literature is that people reading adult books are expected to already understand morality and to already know that things are wrong. So there don't have to
Yep.
be the same consequences or, spelling things out and stuff. So is new adult going to be more like that, where we just assume people know right and wrong and then you tell a
Mhm.
story with that understanding? Or are we still
Yeah.
giving lessons? I don't know. Cause I
Yeah.
mean, new adults, people going to college are still learning things.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's not
true.
like they have a solid grasp of their worldview
Mhm.
yet. But where does that
Yeah.
line end? I don't know.
Or maybe it's more about like relational, emotional lessons when we get into
Mhm.
young adult and new adult, because middle graders, it can be any kind of lesson. It can be nice to your friends. It can be don't judge a book by its cover, which are themes you can definitely expound upon in like books for like older readers and stuff. But I don't know. Maybe it's more about like adult relationships are very complicated. They are
Mhm.
much more complicated and take much more work than childhood friendships do.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe that's probably a lot of it too. And that's also different with every single person and with different
Mhm.
personality types. So I feel like maybe that's more what I've seen in new adult books so far, but you're right. It hasn't been around that long. So I
Yeah.
think that's also why right now so much young adult and new adult feels basically the same, like voice wise,
Mhm.
because it hasn't really defined itself yet as a genre. It's still
Right.
moving that direction. So I'm also curious to see how different it is from young adult when it's really fully defined as a genre. Because right
Yeah.
now it's still fairly interchangeable,
Yeah.
aside from the age of the characters and sometimes the spice level.
Pretty much
It's
those are the differences. Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much the main difference. And it's
Yeah.
maybe new adult is sometimes a little bit darker, but young adult
Mhm.
books can get really dark too.
Right.
And that's fine. I think 16-year-olds can handle that. So
Right. Because something I was noticing when I was reading Mageborn, which is a new adult book, is it felt very YA in tone and, like tropes and all of that kind of stuff.
mhm.
But I didn't feel like the moral lesson was on the same level, right? It didn't feel as clear cut what was being
Yeah.
said. And I think that's good. Like I like the YA thing where you have, lessons and you're learning and you're, dealing with moral questions and that kind of stuff. But this one felt just a little more like, I'm not sure what they're saying. What is this more
Mhm.
complex? Like what's going on here?
Yeah.
Even though it still felt YA.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that line is though. It's still really hard to define
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
But
It's like for middle grade books, you basically spell out what the lesson is for your readers. For young
mhm,
adult books, you paint them a picture, and then for new adult books, you make them dig for it. But there's
yeah,
always a lesson. It's just at a different surface level in
right.
each one. You could even do the same lesson in all of them. You could like talk about friendship or something in each, different genre. But it would need
Mhm,
to be approached so differently because
right,
new adult readers definitely don't want it spelled out for them. They also don't
right,
really need it illustrated for them, but if you make
right.
them dig for it, they'll get a lot more out of it too.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, well, I know a lot about a lot, like eggs, dairy.
Yeah, you're just a wealth of knowledge.
I am.
Let's see. Uh, oh, okay. So another thing, another thing that I think is different between middle grade and YA, and then you can tell me what you think about new adult, is middle grade tends to be in series and by chapter more episodic. So you kind of, I think this is why a lot of middle grade books still do the chapter titles also, because each chapter kind of deals with a new scenario, right? So in the Percy Jackson books, even in just book one, every chapter is like a different monster or a different location or something like that. Fablehaven, it's like a different creature or learning something new that's very specific to that chapter. And even in the series, like if you think about Harry Potter, they're titled specifically by the mission that is going to be in each of the books. But once you get into young adult, it becomes a little more ambiguous, I think.
Yep.
I mean,
No
so you
more
take
chapter titles.
yeah, which can be disappointing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm thinking about like Hunger Games. Hunger Games is pretty defined, but most young adults books, the book is just one big journey as opposed to an episodic journey. And so I think, and I think part of that is because younger kids have shorter attention spans. So you want to conclude things a little faster for them sometimes.
Absolutely.
But also because it's just kind of more fun and it works better in adventure books, which I think is very common in middle grade. Middle grades feel more like adventures, and young adult and new adult feel more like romances, if that makes sense, or like, you know, revolutions and that kind of stuff. Whereas middle grade tends to be more adventure. And so episodic.
Young adult doesn't tend to be like adventure for the sake of adventure, whereas the middle grade books can do that.
Right.
Young adult and new adult books don't do adventure for the sake of adventure. There's always some bigger, like, overarching goal or motivation, which makes sense because also, like, middle grade readers aren't going to be like, well, why did they go on the adventure? Because when you're a middle grade kid, you're like, curiosity is motivation enough. I don't
you're
even
like, the adventure is enough.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that is the motivation. Like, but for young adult and new adult readers who are like, no, I need a reason to get off the couch. Give me a good enough reason. So then that's also hard because, like, I mean, I used to come across this a lot with my clients when I was editing for people. With these, they would be like, this is my young adult book or this is my adult book, but the characters would have no visible motivation. They would basically just stand up and go on an adventure. And you're like, no, adults don't do that.
Right.
Kids do. So this is it. So there were multiple times I was like, this is great. It should be a kid's book. I gave that note to so many clients because it was often for clients who I was like, clearly this is like where your writing level is at.
Yeah.
And I know you don't want to change your story. So I recommend making this a kid's book.
Yeah.
Like a middle grade book. But because, for a young adult and new adult, like, the requirements for the depth of thought you put into your characters and their motivation and what's at stake are so much more intense. They are a lot higher. You have to, like, bare minimum, something heartbreaking is going to happen if the characters do not do something. It cannot be like some milquetoast motivation. Like, there has to be something really big at stake. Because think about, like, as a young adult or a new adult yourself, like, what would it take for you to go risk your life? Maybe some people are like, I would do it for the adventure. Okay, you're not the norm, so sit down. Most people. Also, imagine that you're doing something that you love to do. You're not trying to, like, look for an escape. You're a character, or you're just yourself. You're loving life. You're having a great time. And then someone is asking you to go do something you hate to do. What would it take to get you to go do the thing that you do not want to do? Because it shouldn't be something your characters are all gung-ho about.
Right.
Because then there's nothing at stake. Yeah. They're excited about it. There's no conflict or tension. So that's just bad writing. But just the effort you have to put into, like, pushing your characters into situations becomes a lot heavier in young adult, new adult.
Yeah. And I think too, if you take something like Percy Jackson, the things at stake there are big. But I think when you look at Percy's individual motivation, it's simple, right? He doesn't find it complex. It's not like, oh, but if I try to save the world, then I lose this, right? It's just I want to save my mom, or I want to help the camp, or whatever it is. The motivations are simple. They still exist. It's not like you can just say adventure for sheer adventure's sake, because no one's going to risk their life for no real reason. But the motivations present are very easy to understand and are very simple.
You definitely don't have to dig for them. And there could just be one. There should be one good motivation. That's fine.
Right. I mean, in book one, Percy is pretty solely motivated by finding his mother, even though it's also beneficial in other ways. That's his motivation. And in a young adult book, there are probably going to be a few conflicting motivations. There are going to be people around the main character that maybe want something different or want it for the same reason, or the same thing for different reasons, or anything like that. And then I guess new adult again just gets even more complicated. I don't know. It's so hard to find the line there.
Yeah, it is really hard.
Yeah. But I think because this is something I want to talk about too, if you are unsure where your book lies, like, your characters are 12 or 13, so you're not sure if it's middle grade or YA, or if your character's like 18, 19, is it YA or NA? I think
that one's hard.
Yeah, I think you decide that by your theme and the motivations of the characters. Are their motivations simpler? Is it a little lighter in theme? Maybe it's still a middle grade, even if they're 13, 14 years old. Yeah. Is it darker, even though your characters are 12, 13? Then maybe it's young adult, and then the same on the other end. But I think themes and motivation are what make it, if it's borderline, that's what you have to consider.
Yeah, that's true. It's all about the approach to the story, because technically you could write an adult book about kids. Yes. It would be super scary, most likely, but you could, because it's all about the approach you take to storytelling. Mm-hmm. It's not even the content does differ because the approach to writing the story differs so much between each one. But you could take the same story about the same age of people, like kids or older, whatever it be, and you could write it for every different genre. You would just have to approach it differently. Like, the lessons would have to be different. The content would have to be different, just a little bit. Like, you couldn't include spicy stuff in the middle grade, obviously. Don't do that. If anyone is like toying with that, do not do that.
Don't do that. Please no.
Don't even do it in YA.
Come on,
guys.
But yeah, like on that line, think of Lord of the Flies. That's an adult book with
definitely an adult book
characters.
Exactly.
If anyone's ever read The Shining, so is it Danny? That's his name. He's like a small child, but it's definitely an adult book. And, it deals with things from his perspective where you're like, oh boy, that's an adult thing, but he doesn't understand it because he's a kid. You wouldn't write that into a book for kids because it's intended for them to understand. But from an adult perspective, you can have a kid noticing things and not understanding it themselves that the readers are going to get. So I think whether or not it's middle grade YA or NA is really more about your target audience and what is like the youngest age group that is going to understand what you're saying, because obviously adults can read middle grade and YA and everything, but who is the youngest group that this could potentially appeal to? And I think that's where you decide that line.
Yeah, I totally agree. The youngest, I would say the same thing. Yeah. What's the youngest group that this could appeal to? Because also the big risk with writing middle grade and young adult, I haven't seen it too much in new adult, is talking down to your readers. If you're writing for a group that's younger than you are, you don't want to do that. So definitely think like, what's the youngest that could get this? Like always estimate a little bit more. Like, do never underestimate your readers. It's very hard to estimate your readers. So just overestimate them a little bit, because they will appreciate it. Yes. They will either grow as a reader if it truly is an overestimation, or more likely than not, they'll be fine because they totally have the capacity to understand it.
Yep. So. I heard this. Is it a statistic? I guess it's a statistic that most kids and teenagers like to read books with protagonists that are 1 to 2 years older than them. So if your main character is 16, 14 to 15-year-olds are probably your primary demographic at that point.
That is true.
Because they want to read about where they're going, not necessarily where they are. Whereas adults, that's not really an issue. So if your protagonist is 12, you're probably going to have younger kids reading that. So you need to keep that in mind. If your protagonist is 18, 19, it's still probably primarily high schoolers reading it.
That's very true.
So that's what I've heard. And it makes sense.
I definitely did. I definitely did that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. So definitely a good thing to keep in mind. I mean, you can still write to the age of the characters are, because
it has to be
that's
realistic.
why people are reading it. They're reading it to know what it's like when you're older. But that is a good thing to keep in mind, that typically it'll be kids a couple of years younger reading that book.
Mm-hmm. And something that middle grade does too, mostly middle grade, at least, so when I used to get books at like the Scholastic Book Fair, there would be like the questions, like reader questions in the back, where they're like asking you like, what do you think of this chapter and how so-and-so behaved? Was it right or wrong? Or do you understand what they did? So I think, in Series of Unfortunate Events, in Sisters Grimm, in Fablehaven, authors often introduce new concepts to help kids learn. So like you introduce the concept of a slippery slope, or you introduce moral questions that are maybe simpler and easier to solve. And you do spell those out for kids. And then I also noticed that in YA, a lot of times, certain like bigger words will be used to like to grow people's vocabulary,
Yep.
and I think these are great things. I like doing that. I like reading in YA books new words and looking at middle grade books and seeing like these initial simplified concepts to help understand like the way the world works and everything. And so maybe I haven't noticed that as much in new adults, so maybe that's also where a line is. Like, it's not just teaching with the story, it's also what kinds of concepts are coming up plot wise and what kind of words are you using that you need them to infer from context, because YA seems to be context and middle grade seems to be explained.
Yeah,
And the
I
new
think that's
adult doesn't
true.
seem to have that. So
Yeah. I think one of the biggest differences between young adult and new adult is that even young adult books feel like they're written with the motivation of the author to teach something or other, or to
yeah.
grow their readers, basically. I don't
Mhm.
feel like new adult books are written to grow their readers. It truly
Yeah.
feels like a story for the sake of a story. And in that way, it's more similar to adult fiction. I guess that's, to me,
Yes.
that's like the only difference aside from sometimes the age of the characters.
Right.
It's definitely not written with the intention to grow your
Right.
readers. Yeah, that's
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun though, but it
Mhm.
definitely, as a young adult reader, that wouldn't have appealed to me as much because it just wasn't what I was used to or what I was looking for. I liked
Mhm.
learning things and growing with the characters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, as people get older, they still read young adult books. Like, I still love young
Oh,
adult
oh,
books, read
hell
them.
yeah.
And I feel like sometimes authors get this in their head, and so they're like, I'm also writing for an adult audience, but you're not, because there's a reason we're reading young adult and not adult, so please don't change
Yep.
that.
Yeah, seriously.
Don't
If we
make it
wanted to read adult
spicier.
fiction, we'll go read adult fiction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Don't make it spicier. Don't take the lessons out. Don't stop using those big
Yeah.
words to help grow our vocabulary. That's why we're reading them.
If you're writing a
So
young adult book, write a young adult book that young adults, aka high schoolers, will like.
mhm.
If you're
Yep.
writing a new adult book, you write it for the adult audience.
Yep.
And you don't have to cater to high schoolers. I think that's the definition we'll see more, like you said, as the genre becomes like really comes into its own more,
Mhm.
because it's still so new. But yeah, seriously, definitely don't try to do not try to straddle two genres. And that's really
Yeah.
hard when, especially with new adult and young adult, because they're so ill defined at the moment. But
Mhm.
definitely do not try to be in both. Pick
Yeah.
one. Do not do both. You can't do both. So it's just going to be awkward and feel wrong. Just pick
Yeah,
one.
for sure.
Same with middle grade and young adult. That's less common, but sometimes happens. Do not straddle the genres. Pick one, write specifically for and to one, and your readers will be happy because they know exactly what they're signing up for. They did not
Yes.
sign up for some weird hybrid. They wanted a middle grade or a young adult or a new adult. They do not want some weird half-assed in between, and it will always
Yep.
feel half-assed, even if you put a
Yeah.
lot of work into it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to complain about how strict the industry can get about genres, but those exist for a reason. And it's because readers,
yeah.
and this as a reader, you do this, you are looking
Mm-hmm.
for specific things. And yes, every so often there's a book that is, genreless and weird and it's out of the ordinary, but those are really hard to sell because readers
Very
do not want to take a
uncommon.
risk on those.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
mean, I don't usually want to take a risk on those. I like the comfort zone of kind of knowing what I'm
I
going to
know what
get.
I like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
which is typically young adult fantasy or
Mhm.
new adult of some kind. I've been very
Right.
more into new adult thrillers and mysteries.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're very
Yeah,
good.
good.
Yeah.
Um, Also, this occurred to me like just now. I think a difference between young adult and new adult is, like, I was talking about the themes and how dark they are, but also just the themes in general, because young adult themes are going to be, so young adults still have parents involved and they are not 100% responsible for their actions. By the
That's
time
true.
you're a new adult, you are responsible. Your parents aren't going to be able to solve everything for you, or at
You are
least hopefully.
independent. Yeah,
Yeah.
because even in young adult books where the characters' parents have died, there's always some mentor figure
Yep.
in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, new adult doesn't have that. And I don't think it should have that because that's the
Right.
whole, when you step away from, in real life, you step away from your time in life as a young adult and you become a new adult, that is the biggest change, is you are on your own. Even if you have people who love you and care about you, it is not the same. You are on your own. Even if you live with your parents, you are still responsible entirely for yourself. Even if you have mentor figures, it's not the same parent to child sort of relationship you would have in a young adult. So that's very true. In new adult, the characters are on their own. That is a very different feeling. That also makes it feels like there's more at stake, honestly.
Yeah. And that might be part of it too, is that part of the stakes aren't just, you know, that they're big. It's that the individual is more solely responsible for them.
Yeah. The weight of it all is on their shoulders.
Yeah.
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 That's very true.
So
it's hard to be a young adult.
I know. I still somehow feel like, you know, being a teenager is worse than being in your 20s. I don't know.
Being a teenager is worse.
Yeah.
Well, it was for me, but other people seem to enjoy it. Does anyone actually enjoy being a teenager? I just thought mine was an isolated circumstance. Oh, I hated, well, that was going to be very dark. I was going to say I hated my whole life. That is not what I mean. Well, a little bit. A little bit what I meant.
As opposed to now where your car breaks down and you get expensive tires and other alpacas are involved and stuff.
Horrible. I know alpacas were involved. This was horrible, but I actually prefer this. But I don't mind. Mine might be a more isolated incidence. I don't think I can speak to middle grade, being a middle grade child or a young adult child. I actually, you know what? I withdraw my opinion because I don't think that it's like in like middle of the road enough to be indicative of others.
Yeah. I feel I really liked being a teenager, but I think emotionally it was tougher. I mean, for obvious reasons. I mean, puberty sucks, but
yeah, and kids are mean.
I mean, and middle school was even worse than high school for me.
Middle school kids are monsters.
Yes.
They're so much meaner than high schoolers. They're monsters.
That's why they need lighter themes in their books.
It's true. We do not want to give them any more ammunition.
Yeah, that's why they want the adventure. They don't want to deal with dark stuff. They already deal with that at school.
Seriously, it's honestly very, very true. I did not enjoy being a teenager, really. Also, I went to college when I was 17. So like
that's true.
I didn't really, and before that I was in community college finishing my high school degree. So I don't think I had a very typical teenage experience. So to me, it all kind of felt like a new adult. And then prior to that, I just was not having a good time. So,
I mean, I think I was a really emotionally stable teenager, but I could see the people around me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. At 13 and 14, I was goth and had no friends. At 15, I was not goth and I had no friends. And then at 16, I went to community college and I had no friends. And then at 17, I went to college. So I don't
met me.
And I met you, exactly. So I don't think I had the most like stereotypical teenage experience, but I did not enjoy it. But I think a lot of that was also teenage hormones, which just made me not enjoy it. So it's hard to be a teenager, yo.
I know. I was thinking about this. So yesterday, I'm really in the mood for the next big, really good Wicked level Broadway musical, and I just don't feel like there's one out, but the closest one I could find was Dear Evan Hansen. So I was listening to Waving Through a Window or whatever that opening song is, and I was watching the little clip.
Window. Oh.
I was watching
I have the whole soundtrack memorized.
Really? Oh, I like haven't seen the movie or listened to the songs really until yesterday.
Haven't seen it. I just know all this.
Yeah. And so I was watching the movie clip. And I was sitting there like, gosh, this was me. I relate to this so hard. But then at the end, I was like, this wasn't my high school experience at all. Like, I mean, I went to a small school. I wasn't popular, but I had friends. Like, I knew everyone. I was not alone. But you feel that way. Yeah. So I know that was not my experience, because this is a guy that like literally has no friends, and he like has all sorts of like actual issues, and somehow I still related to him, even though that's not what happened to me.
I didn't relate to him at all. That is so funny. No. I don't relate to Evan Hansen, but I would say you are correct, and it is the closest to a Wicked level musical. Yeah. It is the music is amazing. I mean, Ben Platt, I think, was how I got into it, because Ben Platt is a darling, and his voice is the voice of an angel. I've never heard someone sing with such a beautiful voice.
Yeah, people were criticizing his singing in that song, and I was like, what are you guys listening to? Because I think this sounds amazing.
Well, this is another hill I will die on. Come at me. Who wants to fight me over the beauty of Ben Platt's voice? His voice is amazing. And that's so funny. Yeah.
But anyway, so I think it's kind of a thing that all teenagers feel is like, I think that's why found family is a big deal in YA. And it is in middle grade as well, because everyone feels really alone. Like no one actually likes them and no one's in their corner.
See, I even said I had no friends. I'm sure I had some friends.
I know, that's why it reminded me of that.
Yeah. I mean, even if when you feel alone, like you were never fully alone in retrospect. But you're right. That is something most, at least young adult people feel at some point in time. New adult people feel it too, but I've not seen found family be as common in new adult as it is in young adult. That makes me sad. That should be more of a new adult thing. Listen, new adults need family too.
I've noticed, at least, so this was in Mageborn and then in like a couple others that I've read, that it seems to be more of like a coworker situation instead of friends, which is like, if you can find coworkers that are like a found family, that's awesome. I liked a lot of my coworkers at various places, but it was never really the same. I mean, being forced to work together is not the same even as being in school together, because you have so many more options in school of like people to associate with.
It's true.
There are more students than staff and everything.
Yeah. Your social pool as a new adult is severely limited compared to what it was before. And I think there's also the hyper individualism and like hyper responsibility of I am on my ownness that makes it difficult to connect with other people for a good period of time as a new adult, because you're so busy taking it all on your own shoulders to be your own person, and an adult who doesn't need any help, that you kind of shut people out in this drive to be hyper individual and to not need any help. So I think that's probably part of it too.
Yeah, I think new adult tends to be about finding people, and young adult seems to be more about like realizing that the people around you mean more to you than you thought.
I agree.
If that makes sense. That is also
I totally agree.
A difference. Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so my last point, unless you had anything, this is my last point.
No.
I've noticed, and you can tell me if you think I'm right or wrong about this, I think that middle grade tends to be written by men and YA tends to be written by women. Do you agree or disagree?
I totally agree. I 100% agree. And I will even speak immediately, not knowing this is what you're going to say. I will speak to why. It is because men, part of their brain never, ever grows up. They're all Peter Pan forever.
They like the adventure.
They do. They like the adventure for the sake of adventure. They do not care if it is impractical. My husband does not care if anything is impractical. He is specifically, particularly him, very childlike in many ways. I feel sometimes like I'm married to like a 9-year-old boy, which is
That's
just
what my mom says about my dad.
See, it's hilarious and it's fun because it's exciting and it keeps life light. It can never get too dark when you're with a 9-year-old, you know?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like some of the time. But that is really a thing that I think part of it's like societal pressure. Like people say like women are really right away. We are trained to be the responsible ones. So we lose a lot of that like childlikeness, which is really fun. It might also be part of kind of how we typically are wired. I don't know. I think it has to do with versus nurture.
Right. I think it has a lot to do with the romantic element, that women want to get deeper into the love interests in their books. And so they inherently age up to YA, and men are like, I want the adventure.
So. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's very true. Javi definitely like he plays video games for like the excitement and adventure and like getting to talk to his like his dude friends, when I'm like over here in a sexy nightgown and he's like, yeah, babe, whatever. I'm playing with the boys right now. Yeah. And he's just it's because he just loves to play games with his friends, exactly like a child would. And that part of their brain simply never ages up. Yeah. So I think because they're so much more in tune with their inner child. Not even their inner, it is their openly children, but they're so unashamedly in tune, which is impressive that they can write middle grade. That's amazing. And the kids love. I don't think I could write middle grade. I think my brain is too practical.
I think I would just inherently want to go too dark with it.
Yeah. So you would want to go too dark. I would want some kind of like love interest subplot, like you were saying, which is a hilarious thing for me to say because I'm not great at writing romance, but I always have some like romantic subplot in there. Do you want some more farm knowledge that is directly related to this?
Of course. Bring it.
Okay. So I moved my cup aside as if it was in my way.
Let's do this.
It is not in my way. Okay. So bloodhounds, right? The dogs.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So I looked into them a lot because we got one when we lived on a farm in Oregon for a while. He was a darling boy, but basically the reason that I got a boy bloodhound versus a girl bloodhound is that boy bloodhounds are supposedly better at bonding, whereas and like they'll have more fun and they'll be more like into like, you know, building a relationship with you. Whereas girl bloodhounds are basically like, we are on a mission. We have a job to do. Focus. We are going to track that raccoon. Like they are way more mission based, like work based. And that's just what their personalities typically are. I'm sure that there's, you know, the outliers here and there. But typically female bloodhounds are all about the job. And so they're not as easy to build like a relationship with, like a fun, like owner puppy relationship with, because they're just not really into it. It's not their thing. Right. And then boy bloodhounds will be more into it. Interesting. Which I just think is interesting. That's where I'm like, knowing that and seeing how true it was makes me go, is this like a nature versus nurture thing? Like how much are girls generally geared in some way more towards practicality? I don't know.
I mean, there's the statistic that we literally age or mature faster.
It's true.
So, I mean, that could definitely be a play.
But at this point, even my husband is 6 years older than me. So he should have still reached, like, his brain is supposed to already be matured. Right. So I'm like, he should still, but he's still a child.
So what
just like my bloodhound was, Joey. He would be like, I'm gonna go play, and I'd be like, Joey, come here, listen to me. And he would look at me, sit down, and I would say, come here, Joey. And he would turn in the other direction and just trot away to go like
I'm
chase
gonna
a
have
chicken
fun
or something. Yeah, he's like, I am off to hunt down a chicken. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's just funny. It makes me wonder how much is nature versus there is also so much like nurture societal pressure on women, but it's just so hard to tell. Men are so good at being kids. I want to be that good at still being a kid.
I mean, but I will say I do still think YA is great. So I don't think it's a bad thing that it tends to be female dominated, nor is it a bad thing the middle grade is male dominated.
Not at all.
I just noticed it, and I think it's interesting.
I totally agree. And it's just because that is typically where I think, and obviously this is like not like a hard statistic, but I agree with your observation, is that men are great at staying childlike and women are more into relationships. I mean, even like all like the studies on like male to male friendships and female to female friendships, even that is like women put so much more thought and effort into it. And so much more communicate. Women tend to be more relational. So it makes sense that we would write to a older audience that has the capacity to understand the complexity
and be interested in those things.
And be interested in them. Whereas guys are like, immediately like just like toilet language came to mind because that is just what Javi uses.
I was thinking that happens in Sisters Grimm a lot. Less so in Fablehaven, but you know, it's just like that more immature style of humor. That it just happens in middle grade. And I think that is partially because the writers are male.
It is. It definitely is. And kids love it because men are great at being children. And we all complain about it sometimes, but it's also their greatest gift, honestly.
Yes, it's also a good thing.
It is. I'm so glad that Javi is like, honestly, like, such a child. Sometimes it does occasionally drive me crazy, but I'm so glad that one of us is so chill and lighthearted. He makes me act like a kid and feel like a kid sometimes, which is great. So go get yourself a man child. Just kidding. They're all man children. Actually, you know what? No, go get yourself a self-proclaimed man child, because the ones that say that they are not children, those are the dangerous ones.
Those are the worst.
They fake it. They fake it like they're not, and they're just little balls of stress all the time. And I've met a lot of those too. Don't go for those. They're not done cooking yet. They're still
they need more time.
They need more time. They need to learn to embrace that inner child that is screaming to be released. Oh
gosh. Yeah, because so the reason I thought of this is because I was on TikTok and someone said, I don't know, it was one of those leading questions that kind of made me angry. And they were like, look at your bookshelves and tell me what percentage of the authors are male. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Most of the books on my shelves are written by women because I primarily read YA. I did a count of certain shelves. I was like, this is like 80 to 90% female. Like, was your point that the industry is misogynist? Because I have a lot of women on this bookshelf.
Seriously.
And it's not by design. It's just, it happened that way. I did not do that on purpose.
Same. This is what I'm saying is like, even when I'm given books, like I don't ever look at the author's name when I
No.
like am given a book, or even when I pick a book. I genuinely don't. I will look at the
Mhm.
cover and I will look at the art, and I genuinely don't even look at I don't, no offense, but I
Unless
don't
I'm
care
well, yeah,
unless
and
I'm really into that author for
yeah,
some reason.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't know, but I do coincidentally pretty much only pick up books written by women.
Mhm.
Pretty
I've
much.
actually this past year, 2 years, I've been consciously going out of my way to try to read more male authors because I'm like, wow, I have
Oh,
almost none of them. So, I mean,
nice.
there are some male authors that I do really like, but I've been trying. It's hard to find YA male authors. I mean, I love Neil
Yeah.
Shusterman, but he writes both.
Hmm.
He writes middle grade and YA. And again, I mean, Brandon Mull, Rick Riordan, Michael Buckley, these
Hmm.
are all middle grade. So,
Yeah, Rick
I mean,
Riordan. Hey. Yeah. I definitely I haven't gone out of my way to read male authors. I'm
I don't
trying to
think you
think if I've
need
read
to. I
any
mean, I'm just
YA.
saying that it was like a challenge I gave myself because I started to
Yeah.
get curious about why are there so many, like, am I subconsciously only picking up books by women, or do women just write the books that I like, or
I
is
used
it
to
the
have the
genre?
same thought about British authors. I still
Mhm.
somehow pick up books, read them, start thinking, this feels like this is like British.
Yeah.
And then I will look at the author and it's a British author. I weirdly
Mhm.
do that. I think you're just drawn to what you like, which is
Mhm.
understandable. And yeah,
Right.
young adult off, and I read young adult, new adult. I do not typically read middle grade anymore, and I do not
Mhm.
typically read adult. So
Yep.
yeah, it's pretty much all women,
Yep.
and it's awesome. So
Yeah. I mean, it's just a funny thing. And I don't know, new adult also seems to be mostly women because I
it's
don't know why
basically
this
young adult at
is.
this point.
Yeah, but also for some reason, I think women are more into writing the spicy scenes, which actually I do have a
Yeah,
theory about this, but it's not important.
I
Um,
need to know it.
okay, I
What's your theory?
I mean, spicy scenes are essentially just book porn. So I
Yeah.
think men go for the visual and women go for the
You
literary.
are 100% correct.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I once asked a boy who talks about watching porn, and I was like, why? I just want to understand, like, what is the appeal?
Yeah.
Because to me, it just feels like
So
uncomfortable. I would just be
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. I would be like, this
Yeah.
is not for me to see. This is okay that it's happening,
Yeah.
but I shouldn't be seen. This is not for
Right.
me.
I'm uncomfortable
Um,
even in TV shows when it's like 10 seconds. I'm like, bye.
I know you're like, I'm glad you guys are having a good time, but could you shut
Yeah.
the door?
Yeah.
Like, you
Could
would
I go
not
away?
walk in on people having sex. And so I'm just
Exactly.
uncomfortable. I don't get
Yes.
it. And I asked him why. And he was like, it's because I don't like, he's like, because sometimes my imagination doesn't work. And I was like, your imagination? He's like, yeah, I can't like imagine this stuff. And I'm like, you're
What are
totally
you
right.
talking
It's
about?
because they're visual, because their
Hmm.
imagination typically, and this is, I keep making generalizations, but typically I think the male imagination is not as visual as the female one is.
Yeah.
Definitely not for stuff like that. So I agree.
Hmm.
That's probably why women are like, right, the spicy scenes is
Hmm.
because we don't have that imagination. I think that's also why women do not comparatively, I know some women do, but I think
Yeah.
comparatively, women don't watch porn in
Right.
comparison to most men have or do watch porn.
Right.
Most women do not, but some have. But
Yeah.
and then maybe a couple outliers do.
Yeah.
So I think it is just a totally, our imaginations work so differently.
Hmm.
You can definitely tell in writing how
Yep.
differently our imaginations work.
Yep. So
Yeah.
I think as long
Weird.
as new adult is kind of dominated by the spicy stuff, I think it will be dominated by women.
I agree.
That's my theory. And when
I
it
think you're
starts to branch
correct.
out past that, I think more men will, you know, try their hand at it. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
agree. I think you're correct. I guess it remains to be seen.
yeah, we'll see 10, 20 years from now. I don't know. How long does it take to establish a genre?
I have no idea, but it's so weird to me that we're living in the time when new adult is being established as a new genre. I feel like all the other
Yeah.
genres have been around for a while. Well,
Right.
maybe young adult hasn't been around that long.
Yeah. I mean, both. I always feel like Harry Potter started a new wave of things, which is middle grade. But I think that idea of more like between picture books and not quite adults, like anything in
Mhm.
their middle grade YA. I think that
Yeah,
started up in like maybe late 90s, early 2000s, but
that's
I
what I'm
haven't studied
thinking.
it. That's just
Yeah.
my take on
So
it.
even young adult seems comparatively new to the other genres, but
Yeah.
so new adult is super new. So that's the
Right.
one because we're both like we're both like baby millennials.
Yeah.
So
Like I grew up reading young adult, so it feels just as old as
like
everything
it's been
else because it's always been there
exactly.
for me.
Exactly. Even though when we started reading young adult, it was relatively new when we started reading
Right.
it.
Right.
New adult is legitimately very, very new.
Yeah.
It did
It's
not exist
crazy.
when we started reading young adult fiction.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
It is weird.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
yes.
do you have any
Think that's all
writing
I have.
updates?
Writing updates. I figured out how to make my intended love interest in the current work in progress a little more quirky and likable. So I'm just adding this one thing throughout.
Nice.
My people have like magical powers, right? And I
Hell
like to
yeah.
add little quirks to their personalities based on their magical powers. And I was really struggling with him for a while, but now I got it. It's going to be great.
Nice.
So.
You go, girl. I have not written anything. I
Had a
journaled a
week.
little bit. I did. I had a week. I took both of my journals because Javi got me this beautiful leather journal at the Renaissance, or it was really at like a medieval fair.
Mhm.
And it was awesome. And so I took that out onto the patio with me on my birthday when I was having a meltdown. And I sat in the chair and I just stared at the parking lot in the sun and continued to stress out and did not write in my journal. But that's
But it
as
was
close as I
there.
got to writing recently. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
there. I had the intention to possibly write something. So once I am actually moved in and unpacked, I will write. I promise.
Yes.
But
once you get your new
probably not
office set
until
up
then.
and everything.
Yes.
Yes.
There'll be sunlight and I can even go sit on like the covered little patio and write. I just need to be done moving.
Fair.
Ugh, yeah.
Get past
So
that
nothing.
first.
Sorry, guys, but no updates here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's all I got. What else do we
Cool.
usually talk about? Did you do our closing off stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Follow us on social media. Boom.
Follow us on social media. Karissa couldn't have said it any better. We
It's
are
so
on.
clear.
It's so clear. She could write for middle grade. It's so clear. You can follow us on TikTok. You can follow us on Instagram. It's the Scripturian Society. If you follow on TikTok, you will find some hilarious writer themed videos from Karissa. If you follow us on Instagram, you will see some. She's so good at these. I just found out that apparently Kendall like also is like really obsessed with like waiting for your little like writing
Really?
update post to come out. Yeah, because
Oh,
you'll do like
yay.
this is what we talked about in this episode,
Yeah.
and Krista will give like little summaries or tips and stuff that we chatted about on Instagram. It's very fun if you're a writer. It's just like your little like daily dose of like writer inspiration. So I love it. Kendall loves it. I'm sure everyone loves it. I think that Instagram is fairly popular, and it is all thanks to Karissa. She does it all. So go follow us at the Scripturian Society. If you want to join our writers group, it is free to do so. I repeat, it is free to join the Scripturian Society writers group. All you have to do is go to Story Siren Studio on Patreon. That is our production company, and you can literally just join. It's free. You can just post stuff and we can just talk about writing. It's so easy. You can also, if you want to support the pod or just learn more about the Scripturian Society, you can go to storysirenstudio.com. You can read about Karissa and I and how the pod got started and how our friendship blossomed into this magnificent flower that it is now.
As Ash's first friend.
As Ash's
first real friend.
Exactly. And you can also look at our merch, which is very cool. There is some for the production company. There is a bunch of new stuff for the Scripturian Society pod. So go check it out. It's very cool. We can all mash. I added some new tank tops up there for the summer. So we are ready to go. I guess spring and summer. I basically here the seasons are fall for a week, winter, spring for a week, summer for the rest of the year. So
same
I'm
here.
like
So
summer. Exactly. So we're the like the southern part of the states people. So so go get a tank top. But if you're up in the north and it's still cold, there's also some sweatshirts. So go check it out. And I think that's all I got. So we will see you guys next week. And until then, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.